Hi guys! In this video of the course Arduino starting from zero, we'll talk about the variables. We'll start from an example that you already seen in a previous video and we'll introduce there a variable. So take the code that we used to turn on the LED on pin 13, the LED that is on the board, and that we also use to turn on the external LED that you have connected on the pin 8 in the previous video. If you remember, to turn on the pin 8 instead of 13, we replaced all the occurrence of the value 13 with the value 8 in this way. 8, 8, and also there, 8. Okay, you can imagine that this approach could be very long if the code is complex and easily lead to errors. The best way to proceed is to introduce a variable. A variable is nothing more than a container defined by a name, a type, and a value. A variable must be defined before being used. So, we go there at the beginning and we define a variable. I repeat that declare variable means give a type of the variable, a name, and eventually an initial value. In this case, I define an integer variable. The type is int. I give a name, pin LED, and set the initial value to 8. This value, 8, is the initial value. Of course, the value of a variable can be changed later during the execution of the code. As you can see, the name that I give to the variable is not a random name, a no-sense name, but I give it a name which represents the meaning of the variable. I suggest you to always choose a name that represents the meaning of the variable. In this way, it will be immediately clear the meaning of the variable when you find it in your code. Now we replace the number 8 with the variable pin LED. Okay, now compile and load the code. If you have connected to your Arduino the protoboard with the LEDs that you used for the previous video, you will see the LED turning on and off as you have seen in the previous video. So we used the variable pin LED instead of 8 and nothing is changed. Now, if you want to control the LED on the Arduino board connected to the pin 13, we have only to change the value of the variable and then load again the code. After you have loaded code, you will see the LED on the board turning on and off. This is a simple example about how to declare a variable and about the meaning of a variable and about its usefulness. All the softwares, all the codes are based on the use of variables. Another example, suppose you want to read an analog channel. You will give to a variable the value of the channel, and maybe you need to read another analog channel, so you will use another variable to store the value of the other channel, and then maybe you need to define another variable to store the sum of the values of the two channels. This is only another example of the usefulness of the variables. Okay, there are other important things to say about the variables. One of these is that you can use a variable only in its field of definition. What does this mean? If you define the variable where I define pin LED, it will be a global variable. And you can use this variable everywhere in your sketch. For example, we have used it in the setup and also there, and also in the loop there. If we had also defined other functions, we could also use the global variable there. Instead, if you declare a variable, for example, in the loop function, you can access to this variable only in the loop. For example, we declare a float variable f equal to 10.4, and then in the setup we write f equal f plus 10. It has not many sense, but it is only an example. Okay, now if you compile the code, we have an error. The error f is not declared in this scope. The variable f is not recognized in the setup because we have declared it in the loop function. So this variable exists only in the loop function. Okay, when I say declare a variable, as I have said at the beginning, I mean to give to the variable a type, a name, and eventually a value. But why we have to declare the type of the variable? We have to declare the type because we have to say to the processor the size that must be reserved for this variable in the memory. The choice of the variable type is important because, for example, it is good to avoid the waste of memory, and also because it is good to be sure that the type of the variable can hold the values that will be assigned to the variable during the execution of the code. Okay, it is a list of some types of variable. First of all, it is important to know that the bit is the smallest size with which we are dealing, and that a byte is equal to 8 bits. The first type of variable in this list is the byte. It keeps 1 byte in memory, and we can give to this type integer values in the range 0 to 255. Then we have the variable type int. It keeps 2 bytes in memory, and we can give it values in this range. Then we have the type long. We can give it integer values in this range, and it keeps 4 bytes of memory. Char is an integer of 1 byte, and it is used to store ASCII characters. Float type is used for floating point numbers. It keeps 4 bytes of memory, and the range is this one. Then we have double type. It is also used for floating point numbers, but it keeps 8 bytes in memory. I didn't write the range, but it is a very wide range. And last but not least, the type bool. It is used for Boolean values. Boolean values means true or false, 0 or 1. It keeps 1 byte of memory. Okay, that's all for now. Of course, the use of variables and the choice of the type will be much more clear for you in the next videos, in our next tutorials. Okay, that's all. Bye.